Okay, so I'm gonna talk just a little bit about Lab Exercise Zero, but there's not a lot to it. So if you've read Resource 2 and Resource 7, got your development environment set up, it's really just going through and doing a little Hello World program, a little intro program, and then using the debugger, seeing how it works, etc. So uh, yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing in this lab exercise. Just getting us started. That's why it's called zero. It's almost not even a lab exercise. It's just getting you set up with the development environment. So um, you'll go through these resources. That's the main thing that we have to do. Pre-laboratory preparation. So do this before. And the procedure is that you're going to open up the main.c file in the lab 0 project folder in Eclipse, and you'll check out the program, and you'll see that the main program loops 4 times. There's a little loop in it that is already written for you, and actually I'll just bop ahead here to show you what that looks like. There's a little for loop here, so you can see some of the syntax for a C program. And what we're doing here is setting up some variables up top, initializing them, declaring which types of variables X and I are. And then you're going to open up a connection to the FPGA or to the MyRio. And then if that's not successful, it'll return the status, which would be not successful if it's not, like no connection or connection lost, something like that. And then print to the LCD. So in the lab, the LCD screen should show hello, and then you should put in your name here. And then it's going to print to the LCD screen these values of the sum square function, which the sum square function is just below the main function. So your main function is what will always be executed, and then any sub functions can be listed below the main. So sum square, sum sq is here, and what it does is it takes in an integer x, and it takes this static integer that is sort of like a global variable, and we'll talk more about static variables, which gets initialized to y equals 4 the first time this gets called. It adds to that initial value x times x, or x squared, and then it returns the value of y. Every time it gets called in this loop, it will continue to do that. So this is the little simple first program. You are going through this loop, calling this function and assigning the output of that function to these array variables x and the ith index, printing that value to the LCD screen, and then after you do that, you'll close your connection to the MyRio and return the close status to the output of the main program. So that's the sort of simple program, getting used to a little bit of the syntax, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Also shows you prototyping a function here as well, which is something that is a depending on the compiler, required or an important thing to do. And it also shows how to include the standard MyRio functions that are in the project folders that you set up in Resource 7. So yeah, that's all you have to do. You essentially have to edit this, go through some debugging with it. So this shows you how to do the debugging, how to set a breakpoint, how to do steps in the for loop. So step into the for loop versus over the for loop here. And so you can get a feel for how to do the debugging. So yeah, that's all I've got for this. It's pretty straightforward, but getting everything set up, getting everything working, getting a feel for how to use the debugger, all that takes a little bit of time, and that's going to pay off big in later labs when you're debugging something that's actually a more challenging program. So yeah, all right, that's all I've got.